Hey guys, how you all doing today? I hope you're doing great and winning your lives respectively. So, I would like to provide a briefing about today's session and our guest for today. She is one of the leading nutrition experts that I did come across who has a more holistic approach towards nutrition rather than having just a white and black relationship. She truly believes in that there is more to what you put in your mouth and the effect of it rather than just focusing on calories in and calories out principle. Moderation, vulnerabilities, and freedom are the key principles that she abides by, which has led her transforming lives of many by establishing for them an understanding relating to healthy eating and emotional well-being. She is very passionate about what she does and why she does that, which has led her to be one amongst the best in the field. I'm sure it would be one hell of a session with insights that could have a potential impact and a very positive one indeed on one's life. So, without further ado, let's hear from the lady herself, Jayne O'Toole. Hi, Jane. How are you doing today?
Hi, Sagar. How are you? Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, it's a pleasure all mine. Thank you so much for taking your time out. I know you have been keeping pretty busy, um, especially with all the clients reaching out to you and you doing a marvelous work. I have got some reviews over that, and it's amazing. But thanks so much for your time today.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. I'm really happy to be here.
Great. So, Jane, before we dwell in more into other questions, I would like you to briefly introduce yourself to our viewers, like sharing your experience, what's your background like, and how long have you been in this domain?
Absolutely. My name is Jayne O'Toole. My business is Real Nutrition. So, for anyone looking for me, Instagram is always a good spot. So, it's Jane underscore Real Nutrition there. I am a certified nutritionist. I have been working in nutrition, God, we're heading towards 8 years now since I
Oh,
started venturing into the world of nutrition. I'm a career changer though. I have not been involved in nutrition for my whole life. I have a background that started with broadcast journalism and marketing, actually, so quite different. But over the last 8 years, I have been transitioning steadily, building my own business and my experience. I started out with training and studying as a nutrition coach, but I am a girl who likes to always be learning and developing, and the more passionate I became about nutrition, the more I wanted to learn. So I've built my studies. I qualified with precision nutrition. Then later on, I qualified with Mac Nutrition Uni and became a certified nutritionist with them as well, full with honours. And alongside that, I've done a lot of courses around mindful practice, health psychology. I am quite passionate about this psychological aspect of behavior change and habit based coaching within my own business. It's a huge part of what I do, and it's an incredibly important part. And I do coach, and my beliefs are very much around a holistic approach to coaching, science at the core, very much an evidence based nutritionist. But I believe that people are complex, and if you don't take into account the psychological aspect, it's going to limit your business moving forward. So people are the core of what I do, and they're who I'm passionate about helping. So I like to approach it in a very holistic way. And I think that kind of sums up my business and my professional life best. But yeah, I do one-to-one coaching, a lot of workshops, a lot of speaking engagements, both online and in public when we were allowed to. Um, yeah, and then but mostly my coaching will be based around my one-to-one coaching. That is my passion, really helping individuals. And when I do get the opportunity to go to events, actually meeting people and talking to them and answering questions, that's when I think like I'm at my absolute best because I do love my work.
that's great, Jane. That's a fantastic way to start things off. Um, on that particular note, I would like to ask you some questions relating to your answer. So, Two things that stood out of that intro to me would be, first of all, the holistic, the mindfulness, the psychological effects, and the other would be you kept on making yourself aware and you're still growing and you still kept on studying along with your job and stuff. So the first question would be for you, what motivated you to start in this domain, and how did you manage to do that maintaining your job at the very onset?
I think that the best start for that would be what motivated me was the impact health and fitness and prioritizing my fitness and nutrition had on my own physical and mental well-being. I think that is the foundation of all of it. Throughout my life, I did have an interest in science in school, but I was more interested in English, and that's what got me into journalism and marketing and stuff like that. But I did enjoy science, and I was a strict vegetarian for like more than half my life. And in that time, I really was interested in getting the best nourishment I could get from my meals, and I always had an interest in the composition of food and nutrients. Unfortunately, while I was very knowledgeable and interested in that side of things, I had an incredibly poor relationship with food and with my self esteem and body image. I had some quite significant struggles when I was younger around that area, that were really impactful and very low on myself. I would have had a lot of weight ups and downs, issues where I was over restricting, issues with using food as a significant tool of comfort and for my emotions instead of dealing with them. And that's kind of like long story short of it.
Mhm.
But yeah, a lot of issues around that area. And it was something that I found very difficult to get to grips on. And I would get it at bay, and then something would happen in my life and it would trigger it again. I was never fully taking care of it. And one of the most formative things that impacted my mental and physical health was developing a passion for strength training and getting into fitness, into CrossFit in particular, completely changed my mindset. I was a girl who had always felt the need to shrink myself smaller as a way to become happier. I equated so much of my value around that, which wasn't who I was when I was a little kid. Like I was such a little nerd. I loved my reading. I loved like school and everything.
Yeah.
But through years of just criticism over my body and stuff when
Mm.
you're more overweight led me to just equate my worth on being smaller. Then suddenly I got into strength training and CrossFit, and I started seeing what I was able to do with my body. And
Yeah.
my goals were lifting heavier. My goals were running faster. My goals were, if I wanted to lose a bit of weight, it was more about getting pull-ups quicker and being able to
Nice.
do things. And I, as a consequence, got leaner and stronger and fitter.
Yeah.
But then there were years where I was spending half my time trying to build things bigger because I had no lats. Couldn't do a pull-up, and I was like, I want a freaking pull-up. I need me some bigger
Yeah.
lats. And
Yeah.
my whole mindset changed around my body. I started again remembering what an awesome tool my body was and the things that it could do, and I started valuing it for that. And that shift then allowed me to start believing in myself more and my capacity to pursue my dreams and to actually start considering, what do I really want,
Yeah.
what would I really like to do. And I always had this goal of helping people. Having purpose has always been something hugely important to me, and I never found it, and I did not find it in marketing, and I don't think I ever would.
Yeah.
um, you know, but then I started looking at, I did my CrossFit level one and other courses like that. I did kettlebell coaching and some different courses along those lines first. But the nutrition side of things, particularly as a vegetarian who was doing CrossFit, because at that stage I was still a veggie, really got like piqued my interest. I had so much like interest in, how do I get enough protein? How do I do this? I want to make me some gains. How am I going to do this? You know? And
Yeah.
it just really piqued my interest. And then the wheels started turning, and I developed from doing the thinking I would probably get into coaching to going, nah, this nutrition thing, this has piqued my interest. And it started from there really. And I just got
Mhm.
more and more interested in it. And I thought it was just going to be a sideline. And then yeah, that changed as I never had an initial goal to, I'm going to change my career.
Yeah.
It just, as it built and I grew more and more passionate and realized I can do this, and I believed in myself more and backed myself, that built the confidence to steadily work towards changing career.
That's wow, that's amazing. And as you mentioned, I would like to pick some lines from that amazing um, monologue and the way you have described yourself. Specifically, when you say your goal initially was to be smaller compared to being stronger, faster, and more efficient in what you do. But
Mm-hmm.
when you started doing strength training per se and started lifting weights, it changed your mentality. And a caveat out here, you were a vegetarian, you wanted the gains, and I have seen a lot of people, specifically women, who wants to lose fat because they want to be smaller, leaner, but they are not fortunate enough to have this visualization of
Mm-hmm.
being stronger or faster or being more efficient in doing functional movements, say squatting, deadlifting, pull-ups. And there is a whole plethora of movement patterns and kinematics that like you say, what an amazing tool human body is. You were not aware of that until you started CrossFit and you had more insight into the mindfulness and all this stuff. It's amazing. And on that, I would like to ask, do you think that maintaining a good diet and studying and having this interest in nutrition helped you to gain more or be more mindful, or was it the other way around? You were mindful, and was that showed more efficacy in choosing a better nutrition plans for yourself and your clients.
For me, initially, getting into training and nutrition led me to being more mindful because it forced me to look beyond even just my training and stuff like that. And it brought me into a world where I became more and more aware of how still disordered some of my behaviors and thoughts were. No matter where I was moving in a very positive direction of understanding nutrients and nutrition and fueling myself better and all of that, I still hadn't fully addressed, I don't think, certain behaviors and patterns around emotions and dealing with them. And I think because I became more and more passionate about working in the industry and becoming more knowledgeable, I also wanted to be able to help my clients more. So I believe that early in my career, the more people I met who needed some support around their behaviors and habits and needed me to have a stronger skill set and capacity, highlighted to me that yes, while I may have had the ability to help other people, there were still some things for me that I hadn't addressed, and it highlighted it for me more. And that feeling of, I think, early on, feeling like a bit of a fraud if I didn't address my own underlying behaviors, which isn't true. You can coach people and still need support and
Yeah,
coaching. When you're early in your career and you don't have that knowledge and experience, like I had full on imposter syndrome and would be like,
yeah.
I need to get things perfect. If I haven't dealt with my, like, handled my stuff, how the hell can I stand there and stand in front of someone and offer to help them and be
Absolutely.
support if I don't deal with me? So it kind of highlighted for me the importance of not being like, that saying, the little Dutch boy with his finger in
Yeah.
the dam and like the water goes everywhere. It's like,
Yeah, yeah.
I need to not do that with my own stuff. I need to really work on it. And it opened me up more to delving more into the psychological aspect of things and really, really wanting to kind of steadfast myself a little bit more. And that's been an ongoing process. I'm not going to say like early, like that I dealt with that early on.
Yeah.
It's something that, like, when it comes to mindful practice and it comes to anything like that, or maintaining self-care, maintaining your mind's a muscle too, and has to be thought of the same way. It needs to be trained, it needs to be taken care of. Your emotional health is the same. Like, when I had the realization that, like, you can't just, I'll go to counseling for a little while and I'll be grand and I'm sorted. It's the after. Like with your
Mm.
body, like, you can train to achieve a certain aesthetic, but if you don't know how to maintain that aesthetic and you don't have the habits and behaviors and tools and knowledge in place to maintain that, you're going to go back to where you were, And it's the same with your mind. You can stick a plaster on it, or you can, like, do these basic things, or go and see a counselor a couple of times, but if you don't put the tools in place that they taught you and you've worked on consistently, then you're gonna keep hitting those same roadblocks. It may not be as bad, but we can't we can't foresee a lot of things that are going to happen in life. you
True.
know, roadblocks, all these different things. So it's really important to, with your mental well-being, steadfast yourself and have the tools in place, the self-care in place, the resources, the support where you know you need to reach out to keep you steadfast and support you, as much as when it comes to your health and fitness, you need to have like your non-negotiables, your, these are the things that I
True.
do that, you know, if I can't do everything because it's
Yeah.
not possible to do everything, I still have these things that keep me
Hmm.
going and keep me ticking over. And even if it's like, you know, I eat protein with every meal, I think about that, or I make sure to get out for walks when I can, or I hydrate at least. It's like have that base level that's consistent, and that's maintenance, like, you know. And that's where when it comes to nutrition, mindfulness and that practice becomes so important, because it allows you to be more reflective and see beyond all or nothing, and that sometimes what you're doing, the some things are enough, and be having that awareness and more openness to that is extremely valuable.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's a very positive way of seeing things. Specifically, the way you connect both of them. So it really implies that with more power comes more responsibility. You know, it's
Yes.
not my code, but yeah, the way you have stated, okay, the way your perspective is seeing the human brain, and okay, you can be more aesthetic, you can look good, you can be lifting more weights, but are you fit enough in your brain emotionally to sustain that and to have a positive impact on your life and your surroundings? That's where I think the emotional and the holistic approach comes into picture. How healthy are you emotionally, which
Yes.
would not only reflect on your physiological and psychological changes that you want to achieve, but also the way, the impact that you would have, in across others. So that's a very uh, I would say, yeah, that's a very positive frame of mind and a great reflection to have. And on that particular note, you also mentioned that you had certain challenges in this journey. It obviously, no journey worth is smooth as a knife through butter, but uh, so what were those challenges? What were the three major challenges that you faced amidst your journey till date, and how did you resolve? The reason I ask this is would be, I have known a lot of people, they have specifically this emotional binge eating kind of a thing. They are not happy or they are bored of doing things, which leads them to have this emotional gratification, or this, it's like a drug, you just take that for a certain point of time, you hit a high and again it's a low. It's never sustained like that, and they don't know what's wrong in that. And when, since internet is like uh it's a plethora of a lot of uh information, they are lost, they feel lost. So
Yes.
this is why I asked this question. I think like all of us, you might have also been lucky enough or unlucky enough in those ways to experience such things, and how did you resolve them? If you can brief on that, please.
So when it comes to like binge eating or emotional eating, like there's variance in it. It's like everyone sometimes equates like, I think a really important thing to point out first is like everybody overeats sometimes, and that's absolutely natural and normal and even great. It's even like wonderful sometimes, like celebration. Food is important. Food is
Yeah.
culture. Food is connection. It's family. It's more than just energy, you know? Food means so much more. And that's something I think is always a good precursor in this, because people can get very all or nothing on it. So everyone's going to overeat sometimes, and it's okay to comfort eat sometimes, because comfort is
Interesting. Hmm.
comfort from food is absolutely fine. Think about a dish from your childhood that makes you feel good when you're sick. That's
Okay.
comfort. That's eating for comfort. So eating for comfort can be positive. The problem is when food is your only comfort. When food is something that you use as your only, your sole or your primary source of comfort, that you don't have anything else that comforts you, that's when it's a problem. And it's
Hmm.
like when you're using it to not deal with emotions, because when it comes to binge eating, um, depending on what degree it is, whether it's binge eating disorder or just like disordered eating and a disordered
Yeah.
practice, it can be distressing either way. It's distressing either way. It's never about food. It's always something else.
Yeah.
It's always emotional dysregulation. It is
Hmm.
always, there's something else behind it. You're using food as a tool to distract, to numb, to drown out, or to punish. Like,
Hmm.
you ask anyone who's ever been in the full throes of a binge, like where it's at the point where they don't even know what they're doing. Is it pleasant? Is it a nice experience? It's not. It's painful. It's creates distortion in the stomach. They're in pain afterwards. It's a very
Yeah.
emotionally and physically painful experience. And you don't do that if you're in a good mental health space.
True.
And when it comes to binge eating with people, or even emotional eating, when it becomes your only tool for comfort, you have to deal with the underlying emotion. You have to deal with what the underlying issue is if you want to move through it and move past it as a tool. Like, there's always going to be precipitating factors that can lead to a binge that are more physical, like restriction. If you've been excessively dieting for a long period of time and you're someone who's predisposed to
True.
binging,
Yeah.
that can exacerbate it. That can like lead to
Mm.
it, but that is not the root cause of it if it's an issue that's recurring. It's emotional, or like it's a psychological issue. It's some way to distract. And the big thing is you have to deal with what that emotion is, and you have to sit with and get really freaking uncomfortable to work past it. And that's the one thing, like I would say to people, it's like the power of a pause is something I always say. It's like a lot of the tools that are used for, say, anxiety management or addiction management and things like that involve mindful practice. A lot of them are rooted in mindfulness, and people don't realize this a lot of time, but they're rooted in mindfulness.
True.
A lot of tools used, like halt, or even like urge surfing, which I talk about online a lot. It's one of the tools I would have used when I was younger. It's why I've got wave tattoos all on my side, as like a reminder of this, and the power of it. And it's when it comes to urges, like binging, like that urge to binge, if you can pause when it's at that point of where it's raging, and sit with it and get uncomfortable, the more and more you have the capacity to do that, to ride the wave, like urge surf
Yeah.
that wave,
Exactly. Yeah.
the more you give yourself the opportunity to tune in and listen to what you really need. And in that time when you're pausing, like I use another tool with clients called HALT. And HALT stands for hungry, angry, lonely, tired. And it's like you pause and
Nice.
you ask yourself those questions. You halt, you stop before you do it, and you pause and you ask, am I hungry? Am I anxious? Am I lonely? Am I tired? And it helps you figure out what's really going on. It could even be like, am I sleepy? Am I thirsty? Even can be thrown in there. But it gives you the opportunity to go, okay, if I'm lonely, will food help me?
Hmm.
No. It like call a friend. Am I
Yeah.
anxious? Maybe do some meditation or breathing. Like these things, it's that power of that pause is hugely impactful. And I was learning a lot of that helped me work through things. Is I had to get really freaking uncomfortable, like to the point of not wanting to. I've had to go places in my mind that I haven't wanted to go
Yeah.
and clearly was distracting from at these times. When I was focusing on constantly wanting to be smaller, it was because I was focusing on something I had control over. I could control my size to a
Hmm.
degree. I could
Yeah.
control that. I could eat less. I could binge, I could purge, I could do
Mm.
all of those things, but I couldn't control how I was feeling and what
True.
was damaged in my self-worth. And that's what I work with on clients. It's like trying to highlight if it's something simple, it could be stress from work. It could be anything like that. Like people who aren't getting enough sleep. That really impacts and causes you to have more disinhibited behaviors around food. There's all these different things that can be exacerbating factors to it, but it's highlighting which yours are, getting
Hmm.
uncomfortable potentially to do so. And if it is something that I'm going to say, if it is something that you are finding it really difficult to get a handle on, go speak to a professional. A nutritionist is not like a nutritionist, a personal trainer, any of these people, any of us, even myself who has a passion for it and has studied some health psychology, is not qualified to work with someone with an eating disorder. There are key specialist teams to do this, key specialists to do it, and I think that that's something really important to highlight.
Hmm.
But also say that just because you binge on occasion doesn't mean you have an eating disorder. You know,
Yeah.
there's just disordered behaviors and practices that when it comes to binging, you can do a lot of self help work. You can work on the basics of it yourself with some great books, there's great resources. There's a researcher called Jake Lenardon, who's done some incredible research around eating disorders, and he has a site called Break Binge Eating. That if anyone is struggling or like curious about if they have something that's more concerning, I would suggest checking out his site and his work. His research is cutting edge on eating disorders and incredible. And his site is excellent, and it's got self-help guides and everything that you can download in PDFs. So even if you've got friends that you're concerned about, direct them that way, and it literally will guide you through self-help processes of it from someone whose life is dedicated to working with people with that. So
Oh, I would add these suggestions on the show notes. If people are interested, they can have a look at that. But thanks so much for sharing that. So, if I get that correctly, when you mentioned about binge eating disorders or purging and all this stuff, so would you say that these are more emotional issues that people need to address on? For example, someone is carrying a bit of a fat or is obese, to a matter, would you say that they should consult um, people of this genre first rather than consulting nutritionists, or would you say they should consult nutritionists, understand the problem, and get a wider help if they need?
I believe that it really depends on the individual, and
Mm.
that's it's a vague answer, but it's the truth of it. Like I've worked with people who are obese and had great success in helping them lose weight and get to a
Yeah.
healthier weight and give them the right support depending on where they're at. I've also had clients who I have referred out to a health psychologist because I believe that they are in a better position to help them. And it's very dependent on the frequency of binges. Overeating and someone becoming obese or overweight
Hmm.
doesn't necessarily mean they have a disorder. You know, there can be numerous different things that you can work on looking at the lifestyle with some lifestyle changes and tools and supportive tools toward the nutrition, and even some work on reflective work, self care practices can be hugely impactful on rebuilding their relationship with themselves and their relationship with food without having to go to a specialist. It's
Yeah.
very individual dependent.
All
And
right.
that's unfortunately the with this whole field of nutrition, it is like the basics, yeah, are across the board for everyone. But when it comes to making real change, it really depends on meeting the client where they're at and seeing psychologically and physically where they're at and where you can take them. So it would really depend on the severity of the binges. If somebody feels that their life is extremely limited by binging and they can't get a hold of it, then yes, I would speak to a health psychologist or someone specialized in that. But if you are just overeating generally and have a lifestyle that is habitually a little bit less healthy and is not suiting you, and you can't really get to understand what changes you can make to lose weight, then a nutritionist would do the job. Even going to a PT or a great gym and starting with training, if you enjoy movement and find that nutrition's the harder part for you, but movement's something you're passionate about, start with movement. Nutrition will follow. Once you once you buy into one, the other comes in tandem.
Mm.
Like guarantee it, you
It's
fix
a
your nutrition
byproduct. Yeah.
first. Yeah, it does. It kind of they go hand in hand. You want to like you fix your nutrition and you start losing weight, you feel better in your body, you feel more confident to go to the gym. You know, a
Yeah.
lot of the issues with people who are quite overweight and like obese is a lack of confidence. It's
Hmm.
they feel quite discriminated against. They feel gyms are incredibly intimidating to them.
Yeah.
Like, you know, to anyone who's been discriminated against because of their weight, walking into a gym is terrifying. You don't want to be judged again. And unfortunately, like there's a lot of not very nice kind people out there that
True.
exacerbate this. So it's a huge step like for anyone to go into the gym. So if that is the case, sometimes just walking and focusing on your nutrition first will get you into more of a place to start believing in yourself and believing in the change you can make, because a lot of it is getting that belief that you can back yourself and you can achieve, and taking those little wins before you make any change, you know?
Mm. That makes a lot of sense. See, that's just a speciality, the way you combine um uh, the nutrition aspect and the psychological aspect of things. It's truly remarkable. That's why you have so many happy clients and they recommend you so much. Because not just you because the things you do, but how you do those things, how you approach the problem, that makes you stand out. Because I have seen a lot of nutritionists, they try attacking such problems just from the nutrition aspect of things without understanding the underlying hidden truth behind it, and that makes the person who is trying to seek some help more frustrated because it's not working. They're spending money, and at the end of the day, they just they just fail to see the positive end of this at the end of the tunnel. um, so that's really remarkable approach you have. So on that particular note, I was talking about the challenges you faced. So what were the three major challenges you faced, and how did you overcome them?
Within the changeover to working in nutrition in
Yeah,
particular,
yeah.
um, imposter syndrome, not believing in myself,
Yeah.
something I struggled with in general, which stemmed from the self
Hmm.
esteem issues and self worth. That kind of transitioned beyond the like body type of thing to a lot of dichotomous thinking, black and white thinking when it came to myself.
Yeah.
Just something I had to work a lot on. I
Hmm.
would never treat another person the way I would treat myself, type of thing. Like I would be very flexibly minded and open minded when it came to
Hmm.
others. It's why I have such empathy for others and I work well in the
Hmm.
industry I'm in. But when it came to myself, I didn't treat myself in the same way. I had very perfectionistic tendencies around myself and what I did. And
Yeah.
that black and white thinking was something I had to really work through. And that led to a lot of imposter syndrome initially,
Hmm.
especially changing career and having
Yeah.
been doing what I was doing in journalism, marketing, that kind of area for so long. I
Hmm.
didn't know anything else. And there
Yeah.
was a lot of fear transitioning into a new career and in backing myself in it and being such a latecomer to it. So there was a lot of learning how to accept that there is no perfect, that you
Yeah.
can't help everyone. So it required a lot of reflective work, a lot of work, as I said, on like more mindful practice and bringing about awareness, journaling, reflective work, speaking to mentors. I sought mentors. I went out and sought people that I could, on a professional level, trust their advice and their experience. If I respected them and they had careers in the industry that I respect and I respect their approach, listening to them and taking their advice on board about how it was okay that they made mistakes and they'd done this really helped me. But then I also sought people that I could be vulnerable with, that I trusted, not necessarily your best friend or a family
Yeah.
member, but there can be people that you can have that different relationship with. You can't be like, vulnerability is something I'm all about. I think it's really important, but you can also share too much with the wrong people. So it's
True.
like choosing wisely who you're vulnerable with, but
Hmm.
allowing yourself to be vulnerable with them. I think that's the balance that you have to strike. And having that and people that I completely trusted in that sense as well, being willing to let people in and accept their support and accept that people offering me advice wasn't criticism, and reaching out for help. Asking for help was a big step for me. I found it really hard to ever ask anyone for help, like when it came to any aspect. And breaking that down and willing to accept help from the right people really allowed me to move forward and progress, because it kind of helped me get the support I needed and the advice I needed instead of that fear. It's like, what's stopping you asking for help and seeking support or talking to a mentor? It's your freaking ego.
Yeah.
Like, and for me, that's what it was. It's that all or nothing perfectionist tendency. It's like, oh my God, if I ask them for help, they'll know I don't know. They'll think I don't know what I'm talking about. I can't let them know I don't know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about. Everybody will judge. And it was breaking that was absolutely, I think, the biggest one for me and the biggest challenge. And then having the confidence, like financially, to make the change. It's like
Yeah.
accepting that you're going to have to let go of certain aspects of your lifestyle perhaps for a while, which is a very first world problem. But it's like letting go of like a comfortable salary in marketing, even though I wasn't happy in that, and realizing what's more important to me my quality of life and my mental health and finding my passion and purpose, or a paycheck that can afford me to go on way more holidays and buy prettier clothes and get my nails done more regularly. You know what I mean? It was like, and it sounds so
Absolutely.
simple
Yeah.
when I say it
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
but it was like, what's my true priority? And like with everything, like with fitness, nutrition, all of it, when you align with your true values and your true priorities, things start to line up a lot better. Things start to work a lot better,
True.
and things start to happen a lot more positively, I think, when you do that. So definitely that would be the my biggest roadblocks.
Perfect. That makes a lot of sense. And also, thanks for sharing that because specifically when you mentioned you reached out to mentors for help and you have this imposter syndrome aligning with yourself, and you were able to diagnose that and rectify that shows the inner character you have, because not many people are able to do that, that they are still trying to find their path in the dark, and they don't know that the true help lies within themselves. Once they start reflecting on themselves, they would understand the problem, and then they can reach out to relevant resources who can help them out. And how how would you advise people to find such resources and then to trust them? So I'm sure you might have reached out to a lot of mentors or people. Some things may have worked for you, some things may not have worked for you. How do you get the trust factor in, and how do you understand this is what the right person looks like in my eyes?
I think that is also something that can be a bit of trial and error. And again, even in that respect, you have to understand that you're going to probably make mistakes. Like, I've trusted the wrong people. Absolutely. I've been way too vulnerable with people personally and professionally. And, definitely trusted people I shouldn't have. I found that by backing myself emotionally first, and I went to counseling even up until about 2 years ago. I went back when I had like a tough time transitioning careers and everything like that, and I was having a tough time in my personal life, and I could see whilst I wasn't reverting back to old habits to the degree I would have before, I could see red flags in my behavior of getting very black and white in my thinking and pushing myself too hard. I was about to hit burnout, absolute burnout. Like, and I could see it. Like, I was like, even I could see it in myself. Like, I got incredibly lean, even though, like, for everyone else, I was fit, I was healthy, I was moving forward, but it wasn't. It was my personal life, there was things going on, and I was pushing harder and harder with study. I was building my own business, still working in marketing, training like crazy, and clearly, yeah, I wasn't going back to my old habits, but I was distracting, you know?
Yeah.
It was like, there's something, it's like, why am I doing all these things and not actually focusing? And it was clear that that was happening. Thankfully, I had a few friends and people I really trust kind of highlight it for me and kind of go, kind of see
Hmm.
what you're doing there. And when you have
There is some
a lot of,
smoke coming out,
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And like, I had the knowledge and awareness to flag this. And that was more frustrating. So I was getting into a
Yeah.
space of like, you know what the fuck you're doing and you keep
Yeah.
doing it. So I was
Yeah.
beating myself up more. And then I
Mm.
just literally went, girl, you know what you need to do. And I reached out and like I backed myself by reaching out to a counselor and going to her for like, I'd say about 6, 7 months solid of going along to her and just chatting everything through and having someone talk me through, like, it's like, yeah, I might know all this stuff, but applying it to myself was a very different story to helping other people. And that's the same, coaches need coaches in all walks of
True.
life.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And this was probably the best thing for me. And going to counseling 2 years ago, even as someone who's done a lot of the self work and, for all intensive purposes, living the best life and all that. And
Yeah.
like, if you look online and people assume that, this, that, and the other, I wasn't. I had to go back and I went and backed myself, and I've openly spoke about it because I want people to realize that
Hmm.
your mind is a muscle. That's something, it's why I'm so passionate about it. It's like, you don't have to be broken to work on yourself. You know, going to a counselor just because you want to reflect more on yourself, understand yourself better, understand certain behaviors or why you might have said the same patterns coming time and time again,
Yep.
personally or professionally, can be hugely impactful. So I'd say that was more beneficial to me going back and going to counseling to help me personally and professionally because it changed my perspective. I was a lot kinder to myself, had a lot more awareness, had the capacity to be more, have a more flexible mindset, let go of my ego a lot more, which allowed me to open myself to a whole world of more potential within my business. And it's actually since then I think that I have blossomed more as a practitioner in the last few years with that final nail of being willing to like open myself up in that way. And I think it helped steadfast me through lockdown and developments in business and stuff like that too. And I think that that's a really important the consideration for people if they're struggling is that sometimes it may not necessarily going to be seeking out a mentor in your exact field. It might not be the person who's going to help you most, you
Yeah.
know? Having
True.
someone who's just objective, like, you know, it could be a life coach who's really talented, a counselor, you know, not necessarily a peer or practitioner that you look up to in your field, but having an objective person who can just help you reframe how you view things and how you view yourself and help clear your mindset to look ahead and restructure your business could be, or your personal life, whichever it is you want to change, can be really important.
That may, well, yeah, that definitely. So, someone who has a third person view, basically a bird's eye view, which we, as individuals, while we are in the heat of the moment, we may not have, but someone with a bird's eye view are having as a third person and trying to analyze or trying to play chessboard, from either side and seeing the moves and trying to counter himself or herself for the matter. It may be really beneficial. Well, that's
Yeah.
beautifully put up. And on that particular note, I would like you to suggest some key points to our viewers who, for example, who are currently unable to do some strength training, say they are elderly or they need some help in attaining some level of fitness. How can they transform themselves using the nutrition aspect of things? Question one. And second of all, the same case study but from a different person, from having a different set of goals per se. Someone who wants to get leaner and who is young comparatively, who's and who wants to have nutrition as a tool in the arsenal for mindfulness, growth of mind, for being more physically fit, for becoming leaner. So these are the two extremes I have provided you with. How would you suggest them? Some say top three changes that they can make their in their nutrition aspect of things right now and see the benefits.
So for elderly, especially if movement is limited and they're already elderly, so it's not on the lead up, both are going to have some crossovers because there's certain things that are going to be most helpful for everyone. With the elderly, protein, massively impactful. But we have to consider when people get older, their appetites can lessen,
Yeah.
and the size of the meals and volume can be quite overwhelming. So it has to be easy and accessible. So I would say getting in some easy, like there's a saying that I love, and it's like you should treat your grandmother like a bodybuilder because pretty much the best nutrition for the elderly is nearly like eating like a bodybuilder, you know, like regular ingestion of protein. So it's not to gain muscle, but it's to sustain it. So you want to have as much like with the elderly, I would say focus on protein and trying to get a good protein source in each meal. Even if they're only eating 2 to 3 meals a day, try to keep it as high protein as possible. If it comes down to it and like eating a lot is difficult, I would suggest bringing in a drink or a shake or something that is quite high protein just to get their protein levels up because what's really important is that they're getting nourishment and as much nutrients as possible in the food amount of food that they can manage during the day.
But
So yeah,
sorry,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'll just ask after this. Please go ahead.
But protein is hugely important for the elderly. That would be the most important factor. And then ease, looking at their lifestyle, like what have they got access to? if they can't get to a supermarket, where are they getting their food from? So I would even consider, for the elderly, either using a meal delivery service or some kind of way to get food to them that's easy to prepare, easy to manage, and easy to consume. So even things like high protein yogurts, shakes, things like that to get their protein levels up that are going to be easy to consume. Like nutritionally, preferably for as many micronutrients as possible, we'd like to keep their vegetable intake high, fruits and things like that, whole grains. But the most important point with the elderly to keep them as healthy as possible will be keeping the protein level up
Mm.
and just sufficient nutrients to keep them going, you know?
Mhm. On that particular note, I just have a quick question. Sorry, I interrupted you there. The question was, since you mentioned regular intervals of food intake, although they have limited movements, don't you think that if the person is, I mean, since they don't have enough movement, the excess protein can be converted by a process of glucogenesis into carbs, and that can increase the insulin and can lead to type 2 diabetes, or and also it can raise their creatinine levels for the matter.
Not to the degree that they're going to be able to eat them. And the process of like turning protein to carbohydrates, they're not going to eat enough for that to even be a consideration. It really depends on energy balance. If your calories and the energy you're consuming isn't over your energy needs for the day, then none of that is a concern. You're not going to get like type 2 diabetes eating enough protein to keep you healthy within energy balance. You get
Mm.
me?
Yeah.
It's like, so it's like any food overeaten in excess, be it carbs, fats, or protein, can lead to type 2 diabetes, because the first factor is being overweight. Like, you know, being excessively overweight is the biggest contributing factor. So, the first factor in trying to reduce that risk is to just reduce the calories, get someone to lose weight. And yes, a more moderate diet in carbohydrates, and choosing carbohydrates that are more whole grain, you know, and that are going to sustain them for longer. Limiting refined carbohydrates and refined sugar will be helpful. But if you are talking about someone who's elderly and the most important nutrient they're going to need is protein, and if they're eating that within energy balance and they're not eating enough to gain excess weight, you really don't have to concern with the rest. Their
Hmm.
nourishment and nutrition is the key point. Those little minutiae and worrying about those little things are just going to create confusion. Like when it
Hmm.
comes to, like, people worry about that, the protein conversion. For 99% of people, that's a moot point. You know, it's not an issue. Unless
Makes
you're
a lot
like
of
type
sense.
1 diabetes and,
Yeah.
you know, you're really, really having to maintain things and monitor them, it really is a moot point when it comes to like the elderly or weight loss, like things like that. There's bigger considerations to worry about first, you know?
Hmm. That well, that's yeah, really insightful for that. And what would you advise for someone who is young enough, but due to work pressure doesn't have the time to work out or something like that? How would you recommend them losing or maintaining their health optimally? What changes
First
can
and
they make? Sorry,
foremost,
yeah.
plants, lots and lots of plants. Build the base of your diet around like your meals around plants. Always consider like at least 2 meals a day. I would say fill up half your plate with vegetables
Mm.
for 2 meals a day. It's an easy way to get volume in, satiating volume that will keep you full. Visually, you're gonna see a full plate, and that helps psychologically make you feel fuller.
True.
And you're also gonna get a lot of fiber, which is filling and
Yeah.
satiating, and also great for your gut health and support. And nutrients, micronutrients, like vegetables are abundant in micronutrients, which are optimal for health. And then protein, same reason and more. Protein, one, it's essential to health and essential to life, but it's also really satiating. And if you are trying to lose weight, you want to be full and you want to be satisfied from your meals.
Hmm.
Protein is the most satiating of all the macronutrients. So it will fill you up for longer, and it has a slightly higher thermic effect, which means
To
if
burn
we are
more.
looking at minutia,
True.
protein burns a little bit more energy when you're digesting it than carbs or fat.
Yeah, yeah.
So
That's
if you
true.
want to make those thermic effect gains,
Yeah.
it does help. So I'd say protein and plants, so protein and veg, like protein source at every meal. Try to keep that in mind. vegetables, 2 meals a day, try to optimize vegetables and eat mindfully. So it's a saying I actually only posted about recently. I said like protein, plants, and present is my little mantra that I get people thinking. Lots of plants, protein, and then be present. Slow the feck down. Eat your
Mm.
food slowly. Sit down, be present, be mindful. And that just means chew your food, chew each mouthful. Your digestion starts in your mouth with
The mouth, yeah.
amylase, breaking it all down. Chew your food, savor it. Food's delicious. It's pleasure as much as it's fuel. If you're eating so quick, you're not even getting a chance to enjoy it. Like, savor it. Be it eating for fuel or pleasure, make sure you get the benefits of what you're eating. Chew it, savor it, get the flavors. Even halfway through, put your knife and fork down in your meal. Check in with hunger. Check in. Am I full? Am I satisfied? Or am I still hungry? Again, the power of a pause, like taking that time to stop and kind of start tuning into your true hunger and fullness and actually listen to your body can be powerful, because if you start to be able to tune more into your true hunger and fullness and start being able to differentiate between real hunger and psychological hunger, and it can be so powerful when it comes to weight loss and weight management, because you won't it makes dieting so much easier if you're optimizing your calories intake with protein and vegetables. You're optimizing your nutrients there, and then you're more mindful and you slow down and actually check in with hunger. It creates more power and less of a chance of overeating. And
Perfect.
then, like I'd say, one other really good tip for fat loss, if it is someone's goal or weight loss, is those low hanging fruit. It's a saying, it's a term. It's a term I use. It's really helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, low hanging fruit. So, say there's a tree and there's low
Yeah.
hanging fruit. It's the easiest to pick.
Yeah.
So, as a nutritionist, I look for the low hanging fruit, especially with clients who aren't tracking. You seek out the low hanging fruit, and it's the easiest thing I can change that will elicit the best, like the biggest result. So I have helped people lose so much weight simply by looking at when they give me their diet, and I'm like looking through what they eat in a day, and I'll be like, okay, so they have a cup of tea with two sugars 4 times a day. I go, would you just change that sugar to sweetener? Straight away, over a month, all of those sugar calories eliminated just from cups of tea. So, having touched their food, they could
Hmm.
lose several kg in weight and body
Yeah.
fat. That's a low hanging fruit. So, people looking at their diet right now, listening to this, go, do I take sugar? Could I swap it to sweetener? Do I drink Coke? Can I like swap it to Diet Coke? Those little changes. Do I drink cappuccinos and lattes and have 4 of them a day? Could I swap that to an Americano? You know, those little changes are your low hanging fruit, and they go a long way. If people start like measuring oils, like use a spray oil instead of like oil,
Oh, yeah.
for people who really want to optimize fat loss, those tiny changes don't knock on your diet. You're still getting to eat the same amount of food, so you don't feel restricted or limited to the same degree, but you are actually eliminating a lot of calories without like causing any big upheaval in your diet. And that's what makes sustainable change, limiting the overhaul and the all or nothing idea,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
just doing something consistently that's going to elicit results. So that's the
Well,
low hanging fruit.
perfect, Jane. That's wow. That's so insightful. I think I would also start incorporating some of the changes you enlisted here, because these low-hanging fruit idea is truly remarkable. Um, I think most of the people, they think that nutrition is binary, one or zero. It's nothing in between, but there is also some color to it if you add, yeah.
But I'm
So
around.
that's, yeah, exactly. the the platter should be full of all colors, as you said, that throw in your veggies, make it more colorful, vibrant. Carrots, cucumber, spinach, broccoli, if it suits you and the acidity level of yours. And it's so great, insight into it. um, that's, I think a lot of people would be truly benefited by that. And just before I let you go, what would be one change, or okay, let me make it more interesting for the viewers. What three best advices would you give to the people? You don't know who they are, female, male, elderly, young. in what sector are they, the three changes that can they can make to their life, and they can immediately start seeing the effects.
Nutritionally, or can I bring in other
Anything,
aspects?
any aspects. But I would request you, one, at least one should be nutritionally, if you can.
Yes. So I would, with the nutrition side of things, I would definitely go back to my protein, plants, and present. So that's very much nutrition, would be three in nutrition. Outside of nutrition, though, because I'm going beyond three here because I'm
Yeah,
terrible
that's
and I
fine.
can't do this because that's nutritionally. But outside of that, I would say sleep and movement. And by movement, I don't need necessarily mean planned exercise. I just mean moving more generally throughout the day, walking, be more conscious of that. Just, housework, gardening, playing with your kids, jumping around, other pursuits that involve movement that are more fun. We all know what I'm talking about there.
Yeah.
Just generally move more. Move more in your life and don't underestimate the value of that kind of movement. The benefits of just generally being more active in your day to day life and making time for movement is huge for your physical and mental health. Getting outside, walking, doing whatever you can to just move more generally in your life will be hugely impactful. So I would say move more, sleep, and then around your nutrition, sticking to the trifecta that I'm claiming to be
Yeah.
one, which is protein, plants, and present. So that was a loophole I took there. Always looking for the loophole.
Yeah. Well, that's perfect. And any supplementation, or would you recommend anything, or no?
I There are certain things that I do. I would be a big proponent recently of advising. I've been advising vitamin D3 for years,
Yeah.
for so many reasons, for immunity
Sure.
primarily, and I know that right now it's a big one that's being like recommended quite a lot around,
Mm-hmm.
like because with COVID-19 and everything like that. But it is really positive, and particularly when you live in Ireland or the UK or countries like
Yeah.
that where we are so limited in sunshine,
True.
and it's very difficult to get it from any other source. It's so small when like the amounts of it in any kind of food. And omega 3 like I would advise for quite a lot of people for, again, the general health, physical and cognitive benefits of it,
Yeah.
and be it from eating oily fish throughout the week, like if you're eating salmon or mackerel, or even if you are seeking it from a vegan source, algae is an incredible source of omega 3. So it's a tip for vegans. I'm not trying to force everyone to eat fish, especially not
Yeah.
as seafood as we get right now.
Yeah.
You can get it from algae.
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Jane. That was a mind-blowing episode, and the session, and the way you have proposed a way of not having just black and white, and enjoying the vulnerabilities, and also having the power to accept that, but be responsible with it, you know. It truly stands out to me, and I'm sure there would be a lot of clients reaching out to you soon enough, knocking at your door, asking for help. Please, please, change my life, change the perspective. Because I think the way you have stated your journey, that's what stood out, or that, at least to me, in my perspective, it's not just trying to address the problem at hand, but taking a step back and being more holistic and trying to see what's the source of the problem. It's not just the food, it's not just what you're putting in your mouth, it's not energy in, energy out, it's much broader than that. So understanding that and trying to address that, I don't know many people who does that except yourself. So, well, I must say that it was truly enlightening for me too. Thank you so much, Jane, for your time today. And I would provide your contact details in the show notes. So if people are interested, they can reach out to you. Just in case if someone is listening, I would request you to please again tell me the places where they can contact.
The best place to find me is usually on Instagram, which is Jayne, Jayne. underscore real nutrition. That is always the easiest place to find me. And then that has the link to my website. That's got a link to if you want to reach out there and find me. It's definitely the easiest place to access me, either via DM or it's got my email and everything. You can send me an email through Instagram too.
Perfect, Jane. Thank you so much for that. I would attach these as my show notes and people can reach out to you. So, yeah,
Perfect.
that's all for today. And have a great evening ahead. And I'll see you shortly again. Thanks,
Thank you
Jane,
so
for your
much
time.
for having me.
It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure. Thank you. Take care.